Hello friends, welcome to the 12th part on the British revenue extortion in Bharat, so the case of Tirunelveli district. Now this part is again optional, so we have covered all the analysis and data in the previous parts. So this is more of an explanation of some of the background logic, what the British officials used and the flaws in that logic, and particularly it's all about the yield per acre, and I'll explain that concept in the next couple of slides and why is it important and why it caused so many problems. So let's hop on to the slides. So there's this very famous kind of saying, garbage in, garbage out. So I have no idea who coined this saying, but he must have been a genius, because that's precisely what happened with British statistics in India. So they were based on completely wrong, or you can say garbage assumptions, and thus their output was also kind of garbage as well. So why is the yield per acre important? Now the yield per acre is quite important because the British fixed revenue based on two or three main factors. One of them was the yield per acre, and this was used to fix what was known as a permanent settlement. So permanent settlement did not mean permanent in any sense of the word. What it meant was it was a long-term settlement, say 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, and the revenue, so the land revenue demand was fixed for that particular period of time. So which is why the yield per acre was very important. But for most of the British rules, say from 1800s to almost 1900s, even early 1900s, this was purely a guesstimate. Okay, and another big guesstimate of British officials was the land under cultivation. So the land under cultivation was typically lower than what the estimate was. So I've got another set of statistics for Rajasthan, for the Ajmer Marwara region, which is based on good book, and I'll do a video series on that. And even in there, it's very apparent that the land under cultivation could be lower. The actual land under cultivation could be lower from the estimate by almost anywhere from 10 to 40%. And the third statistic was, the market value. So the market value of the produce, say rice in this case of the Tirunelveli district, was fixed on the basis of the average value for the last 10 years. Now, as I pointed out before, the farmer didn't get the market value because he had to sell it to these dalals or middlemen at very low price, and even if we had to transport it to the markets, we are talking before automobiles, the internal combustion engine, etc., etc., where transport was very difficult and most of the goods were locally consumed. It so the market price was not a reflection of what the farmer was actually getting. So you had three kind of pieces of completely garbage data which form the input. So you had the average yield per acre, you had the market value, the average market value, and the third, you had the land under cultivation. So all of these kind of went in and produced this very unrealistic assumption on part of the British officials that this is the kind of revenue we should extract, and which was, absolutely horrendous. So let's move on to the next slide. So from 1860s, a few things were done. So there was a resurvey of districts in the Madras Presidency. So we are not just talking about Tirunelveli district, entire Madras Presidency. And now the British officials, they always had this fear that they were missing out on, some great source of revenue, or they were missing out on a lot of money. So they wanted to kind of fix this average yield per acre with absolute precision. Now this is impossible to do because you've got hundreds and thousands of different soil types. Every soil type has different fertility, different productivity, and so on. Plus, you've got sources of water. Some plots have good water sources like canals, wells, tanks. Some don't have any. Some are reliant on rainwater. Some are barren. So you can't get an average yield per acre. So they did what was known as crop cutting experiments. So, and see, these are experiments. So anybody who's dealt with science knows the difference between experiments and practical or reality, or between theory and practice. So crop cutting experiments, they basically took a plot of land and they tried to replicate what the farmers were doing, and based on the yield of that plot of land, they calculated an average yield per acre. And again, the same thing was done. The soil was divided into an n number of different categories. So good, bad, average, red, black, and so on and so forth. So, we spoke about these terms in a couple of episodes back, which were kind of used by Pakal. So this was done, and now we have got a few stats. So I'll show you the table on the next slide. So this is a composite table I created based on the data provided by two researchers. So one is by Pingre, and I've got given the links to both the papers. So you can freeze the slide, and if I remember, I'll also link them in the description. And Yanasigawa. So this talks about the average produce of uh, average yield per acre in terms of paddy. Now, paddy is different from rice. Rice is basically, once you dehusk, paddy, you take all the chaff out. The grain which is left is the rice. So the weight of average yield of paddy will always be more than the average yield of rice, because you get all that, kind of extra stuff taken out, and you only are left with the rice grain. So this is based on the different crop cutting experiments done till 1957, even after independence. So in 1868, the average produced in kilos of paddy per acre in Tirunelveli district was around 1,173 kilos. So this was in pounds, which are converted into kilos for easier understanding. And in 1870, it was 802. Again, 1870, another set of experiments, 710. 1872, 1173. 1901, 647. 1907, 47. No data for 1917. 45, 49. So the period just when they were about to exit and had exited. 45 was just after the war. So very years of scarcity in India. So 527 kilos. And after independence, obviously, because of the encouragement given by the government and subsidies, it kind of goes up to 679. So you can see there's a very wide variance. And this data can be interpreted anyway. You can say that the soil fertility was going down, or the soil fertility, uh, was kind of up and down, or maybe the plots they were using were different to the real plots. So the yield per acre, like I keep emphasizing, is a very illusory amount, and it can vary very widely depending on what plot of land it is, what are the water sources, and all the other stuff. So the next table is just from Yanasigawa, and he's given the data for Tirunelveli district. So here he has converted the kilos of paddy per acre, which is in the lower row, into kilos of rice per acre. So you can see, as I've pointed out, with the paddy will obviously have more weight and more bulk than the rice itself. So typically 943 kilos of paddy per acre, if that's the production, it translates to 410 kilos of rice, because you get all that husk and chaff taken out. So it's roughly somewhere around 45%. So if you have got X amount of paddy output per acre, your rice output will be 45% of that. And it kind of again shows the same oscillating pattern, but this data is for the 20th century, from 1905 till 1953-54. So we'll have to take this 1945-49 as the kind of the break period, because that's when we kind of got independence, and the transition of power was done into our hands. So again, you can see the same thing. So for these experiments, it varies quite widely. So somewhere you got, say, 410 kilos of rice per acre, then you got 607, again 534, 570, 560. So a little bit of more steadiness here, and finally after independence it goes up, and it kind of drops down quite sharply around 45, 49. So another thing which is completely overlooked was during the Second World War, millions of cattle, so bullocks, especially in bulls, were slaughtered by the British to feed their troops and to supply Britain. So this caused a scarcity of these animals to plow the fields. So that's one factor why the yield per acre has gone down as well. So you can see, if this was the state in the 20th century, when supposedly agricultural technology had advanced, you can imagine what was the state of affairs for large part of 19th century, from say 1800s to 1900s, for almost 100 years. And this kind of inaccurate or guesstimate was used to fleece farmers, Indian farmers everywhere, not just Tirunelveli. But in this case, obviously, we are specifically looking at Tirunelveli. So, folks, so that's it for this time. Next video, we'll have a deep dive into the analysis of Tirunelveli data. So you can watch that video if you're really interested in data analysis. Otherwise, you can safely skip that video. So I hope you have liked this video. So if you have liked, please do remember to like, share, and subscribe. And do watch our videos on different Sanskrit mantras and stotras, or the chants, by my father, Dr. Ineshwar Shastri. So I'll be uploading another video of the called Nirvana Shataka, and the recording will be better. The sound quality will be better because I've got DSLR now and label mic, so that sound quality will also go up. And I've done a few tweaks in the background while recording this video. So please do leave in the comments if you think that the video, so not the video, the sound quality of this video is better than the other recordings. Okay, thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.